Hey everybody, it's Mike from the Mike Wagner Show, powered by Soundcraft Studios, brought to you by our official sponsor, the Mike Wagner Show, international warring author Mia Moses is Missing, available on Amazon and paperback and ebook. Coming soon, Missing 2, Double the Suspense, Double the Fun. Check it out on Amazon. Also brought to you by Sweet Psalmist by Serena Wagner, based on the life of David and Queen, 30 exquisite pains and King David Psalms, Amazon.com, keyword Sweet Psalmist Serena Wagner. Also check out the Mike Wagner Show at the MikeWagnerShow.com and a link tree at the Mike Wagner Show, 50 podcast platforms, 110 countries, including Facebook, SoundCloud, Spreaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio, also Apple Music, BitChute, Roaming, YouTube, and follow us on Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and TikTok today. We're here with amazing Leigh, who is a New York-born author, graduate of McGill University with a Bachelor of Science and a Master's of Education from Harvard, and divides her time between Massachusetts and Mexico City, and spent her career blending research, policy practice, and also creating social impact in the Americas and beyond. Talk more about that. She's a recognized expert in global education and development. She has a new book out, which is a memoir chronicling the ensuing process, and also the times of during which she grappled with the decision to apply for an Austrian citizenship, involving her grandfather and the bureaucratic process, going through numerous family stories and uncovering the gaps in the family heritage. The book is called Austrian Again, Reclaiming a Lost Legacy. Live, ladies and gentlemen, plus dudes in beautiful downtown Massachusetts, the amazing New York-born author, graduate of McGill University and Harvard, and the author of the book Austrian Again, Reclaiming a Lost Legacy, multi-talented Anne Hand. Anne, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thanks for joining us today.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you, Mike. Thanks to everybody listening on the move, at home, wherever y'all are. Thanks for making the time.
Well, it's great to have you on board as well. And so you're a New York-born author, graduate of McGill University with a Bachelor of Science degree and a Master's of Education degree from Harvard. You divide your time between Massachusetts and Mexico City. You spent your career blending research, policy, and also practice to create social impact in the Americas and beyond. You're a recognized expert in the global education field and development. You have a new book, it's a memoir chronicling the ensuring process during which you grapple with the thought of decision, applying for an Austrian citizenship, and also involving your grandfather, the bureaucratic process, and also going through numerous family stories, uncovering the gaps in family Holocaust history. The book is called Austrian Again, Reclaiming a Lost Legacy. Before getting to that, Anne, tell us how you first got started.
So I was just reading the news one day, like I think a lot of us were doing, sort of in September, October at the beginning of the pandemic back in 2020. And I was reading the news before I was getting to work one day, and it was so weird because it was the first time I'd ever read the news and seen something that, I started to double take, and I was like, huh, this is something that it like might apply to me in a different way from anything I've ever read before, and this is really
Mm-hmm.
weird. So basically, there was a headline saying that the Austrian government had opened up a new pathway for the descendants of people who had been persecuted and victimized during World War II. And I knew we had kind of those pieces of the family story. I knew like the sort of broad strokes, it seemed like that was something that was related to myself and my own family history. But it was also something that like I never thought of before. I never thought that, you know, that anything like this would be available. Austria historically was always very like against kind of saying that they didn't done anything wrong during World War II, even though, over the last 20, 30 years, they've kind of done an about face about that. And it's something I've learned as I've gone along, just how, Austria has also evolved in terms of understanding its own role, during the war and after the war and all that. But at the beginning, it was just like, wait, what is this? And I'm curious and I want to learn more and I want to see where this goes. I want to kind of, go down this rabbit hole and see where it goes and just explore a little bit more about my own family. And it was a way to kind of do that.
And what was that one moment on their part that simply did an about face and letting the descendants of the Jews victimized from the Holocaust? What was that moment that did about an in face? Because as you mentioned before, they're involved with the slaughtering of the Jews, and all of a sudden they did an about face. Was it like time healing? Was it like they had regrets, change of mind, or is it simply like changing times?
I think it's an evolution, right? All these things, they never happen overnight. And they're generational changes. They're changes in terms of like who's making the rules, who's in power, who's interested in kind of exploring this a little more. So, like after World War II, for the first, say, like 50 years until the 80s, 90s, Austria very much considered themselves a victim too, like officially. They'd say, no, we were the first country that was kind of forced by the Nazis to become part of, their empire, even though, they basically said, hey, we're happy for you to come in and attach us to you. But the story after the war was that they were victims too, and that they had suffered, and that they hadn't been the perpetrators in the same way that, the German Nazi Party had been, as sort of getting the ball rolling and getting all of, what ended up being, a devastating series of atrocities as part of this really terrible war, getting all that started. But as time goes on, as people, start to talk about things a little bit differently, as generations start to shift, as the historical record also changes, and people pay attention to things in a different way. There was, sort of a shift in Austria in terms of how they understood their past, how they understood not even just complicity with the Nazi regime, but their active participation. And it's been really interesting now, because you're talking 80, 90 years after the fact. I've at this point, writing the book and reaching out to people and all of this stuff, you start to have these different conversations. And I remember, with I was talking with somebody at the Austrian embassy in Washington, and just saying, I never expected this door to open. I never expected there to be an olive branch. And he stopped me and he was like, no, it's not an olive branch. Like, this is something that we're taking very seriously. This is something that we want people to understand and appreciate, and basically come back and claim something that's theirs. It's not an olive branch. We're not asking for forgiveness. We're not asking for peace. We're just offering it. And whatever happens, whoever wants to, walk through that door, it's something that's available, and that's there. And that really struck me because you hear somebody like working for the government and whatever, and it's something that they're really taking seriously, and they're considering it in a different way, I think, than saying, it would be different, if this was something about money, or if this was something about property or something like that. And they've done all that, right? Like they had to
Mhm.
at the end of the war, they had to
Right,
make
exactly.
reparations.
Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
like, and I just thought about this too. Was it because of their economy that was failing? Was a decreasing population, or was just simply I'm trying to think. It was like, or was it simply tax incentives for them for the Jews and for the others to come to Austria, to rebuild their economy?
No, no, their economy's fine. They're doing well. It's a rich country. It really is like something coming from really a desire to make reparations in a way that money can't buy, in a way that's really truly meaningful, and comes from a really deeply rooted place of trying to, not just, say, okay, like here you go, whatever, but say, we're sorry. We want you to understand that we're sorry, and that words and actions can't replace what happened. But there is this openness towards a real kind of reconciliation, and being able to have these conversations as equals, being able to come and take your time and stay or not stay or whatever and do your thing. And that's a very different kind of dynamic. And I think that's a very real dynamic. And I had never, when I started all this, I think I was pretty skeptical, like a lot of people are when they start this process, because one thing is to say like, okay, here's this like program that's available, and you can do it. But they can make it really difficult if they want to. They can ask for all these documents that nobody has anymore because they were destroyed, or because the families just didn't want to talk about it, so nobody knows where to find anything or whatever. They can ask for a lot of things. They can make people's lives really difficult if they even like try to do this. and they've made it as easy as they can to, fulfill their requirements and kind of make it, just okay and in their books. And I feel like going through this process and realizing how they want to facilitate it, that's a very different feeling, right? When you're like, oh, like you are making this accessible, you are making this relative, like no process like this is easy, but you're making it relatively easy, and you're sincere and you're genuine about at least wanting to open the door and then see who walks through.
Something, I think that's a really good point. It's a great place to visit. Would it be a great place to live? We'll find out more with author Anne Hand of Austrian Again, Reclaiming Lost Legacy. But first, listen to The Mike Wagner Show at themikewagnershow.com, powered by SoundCloud Studios. Visit online at soundcloudstudios.com for all your needs. Look at a professional website without breaking your budget. SoundCloud Studios is the answer. SoundCloud Studios offers fast, affordable custom web designs that blow the competition away. Call today, 1-800-303-3960. It's 1-800-303-3960, or email to support@soundcloudstudios.com. Mention the Mike Wagner Show, get 20% off your first project. SoundCloud Studios, take your image to the next level. Also, time to give official shout out to our official sponsor, the Mike Wagner Show, international warring author Mia Molson-Zia. If you love fast-paced mysteries, you'll love Missing by Mia Molson-Zia, available on Amazon in paperback and ebook. Missing is fast-paced and intriguing with an unforgettable twist. It takes place in 4 countries, 2 strangers, 1 target, where truth is illusion, and those will be the first to go missing. It's available on Amazon in paperback and ebook. Missing by Mia Molson has got great reviews, and even loved endorsed by Howard celebrities, including Joanna Cassidy, Forbes Riley, and many others. So grab your copy today of 4 Girls Missing by Mia Molson, available on Amazon. Coming soon, Missing 2, Double Expense, Double the Fun. Check it out on Amazon. Also brought to you by Sweet Psalmist by Serena Wagner, based on the life of David, including 30 Quids of Pains and King David Psalms. The Sweet Psalmist gives new perspective of David through Psalms he wrote as the time of shepherd started and complicate a turbulent relationship with King Saul. It's a story of love, betrayal, repentance, hope, and more. Check out the Sweet Psalmist by Serena Wagner on Amazon. Keyword Sweet Psalmist Serena Wagner. Also, check out the Mike Wagner Show at themikewagnershow.com and a link tree at the Mike Wagner Show. 50 podcast platforms, 110 countries, including Facebook, SoundCloud, Spreaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Music, BitChute, Rumble, and YouTube. Follow us on Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, TikTok. Take us with you on any mobile device. And for great gift ideas, go to Amazon.com. Check out the Mike Wagner Show podcast, T-shirts, pop sockets, throw pillows, tote bags, hoodies. Makes great gifts 24/7. Go to Amazon.com. Check out the Mike Wagner Show podcast. And for more great gift ideas, go to Amazon.com/Mia Molson for great books, merchandise, and more. And support the Mike Wagner Show on Anchor FM, PayPal, and the MikeWagnerShow.com. We're at the multi-town New York-born author, graduate McGill University and Harvard. Dividing time between Massachusetts and Mexico City, the well-traveled Anne Hand of Austrian Again, Reclaiming Lost Legacy on the Mike Wagner Show. And just to get the fact that you expressed interest in Austria, and from my understanding that you want to go live in Austria and apply for citizenship. And what exactly motivated you into applying for citizenship?
Well, I mean, my life is wonderful, to be perfectly honest. I never thought about living there as I was doing this. It was more, I think, wanting to understand my family's story. My grandfather had immigrated in the 20s, and he was always, very hardworking, very, like he was always so happy and felt so lucky to be American, in the way that the country really let him do what he wanted to do and at least have a shot, right? In a
Mm-hmm.
way that the country that he left behind, the Austria that he left behind, just wasn't able to at that point in time. And then his mother she stayed. 3 of the kids went to the U.S. Their parents stayed, which I think is pretty common. Also, it's harder to move when you're older. It's harder to immigrate, but. Basically, my great grandmother was very, very lucky to be able to get out in mid 1938 after Nazi Germany had annexed Austria and before things got really, really bad. So I had been to Vienna once, Vienna, the capital of Austria. I was a tourist like anybody else who kind of does the stuff
Mm-hmm.
that you do downtown. You get in the hop on, hop off bus, you kind of look at the cathedral and the opera house and whatever. And so I had no real connection with the city. I had never been there in any real way. And when I started, it was never about moving. It was never about any of that. It was more about understanding the family story, learning more. I think thinking about my grandfather and his own journey, to the U.S. And the way that, he maybe would or wouldn't be interested in what I was doing, what I was finding. And it's different, right? When you learn about your family and these kinds of difficult stories as an adult, because it's not about what you were told as a kid. It's about what you find, on Ancestry or on these other websites or what you can find in, archives. And I was able to do all that remotely, which was really, really cool. I hadn't realized that so much historical information, genealogical information is available for people who just want to find out more and learn more about their family's stories. Um, so yeah, like at the beginning, it was just like, oh, here's this thing I read that like, maybe I'd qualify for this citizenship thing. I don't know. I just want to learn and I want to find out more and I want to honor my family. I want to think about my family. I want to, remember them and do right by them because I think we all want to leave a legacy and I hope that they would have been happy, right? That I
Hmm.
was digging and I was trying to find out more about what they went through, even if, when they were alive, they weren't stories that they were comfortable sharing. It's different, right? When you're an adult and you want to have those conversations, and then you just can't because the people have passed on.
Right, yeah, and I was just thinking about with the citizenship with in America, you gotta fill out these certain papers, you gotta go through these documents, you gotta take a test, you pay a fee and everything. It gets quite lengthy. And how does the Austrian applying for citizenship? What's the process like? Is it just as difficult? Was it like easy, or is it just like average to apply comparison to America?
Well, so this is a special pathway, right? So the way that you do it is you have to basically say to them, okay, here's the relative that I had that fits your criteria for why this pathway is available. It's about historical reparations. So you have to show that your ancestor was there, that they were a citizen, they were resident. And they were persecuted basically by what happened in the lead up to World War II and then potentially during the war itself. So the big difference is that Austria has like incredible archives and records of residents and census records and birth records, and they have all this stuff going back a really, really long time. So for them, it's very easy, to validate that your relative is your relative and that yes, they were persecuted because it's all there. They just have to find it. And so
And, and
it's
how
them.
long
Mhm.
and how long did the process take on that one? How much did it cost?
No, it's free. It's free because it's a reparation process.
Nice.
So, this is something that the government is just saying, like, hey, we're willing to do the legwork. Just like tell us who you are, tell us who your ancestor was, show that connection, make it happen. And their normal citizenship process, I mean, it's more like the normal process in the US, right? And it's a very long, very difficult process, where they do the same thing about like language and tests and all this other stuff. But this is something very, very different because they were trying to right a historical wrong and they were trying to open the door to people. There's, I think, somewhere around 35,000 people who have done all this in the last 5 years. Like, that's a lot of people, especially for a
Hmm.
pretty small country. Like, Austria is a very small country. And knowing that they're putting in the manpower to do this and that they're making it available, they're making it accessible, I mean, it's very different. And I've never heard of any other place opening the door like this and then making it so that people can actually do it.
Hmm. Right. Yeah. And of course, back in the day with Austria's lifestyle, things were going good before the war. What happened? What's a lifestyle like in Austria right now compared to what your parents went through, like especially during the war?
So, after World War I, and we're talking about like the 20s and 30s, Austria had a lot of problems. They had a lot of economic problems. It used to be part of this big empire. The empire got split up because they lost the war, and Austria kind of didn't really know what it was. And so, from the end of World War II, in 1918 until 1938, when World War II basically got going. it was a very difficult place for a lot of people to live, even before the anti-Semitism and the persecution started to get really, really bad. So, the Austria that my grandfather left behind, that my great grandmother left behind, that's a very different country than what's happened and how it's evolved. I mean, now it's very peaceful. It's neutral. It's completely neutral.
Oh, nice.
It's a wealthy country. It's an international center for there's like UN offices in Vienna. Lots of, history, lots of arts. So it's a very different place and things have improved. I mean, really, they've improved so much since my family left. And I think it's important to recognize also that, the very complex Austria, very difficult Austria that my family left behind, it's not the way it is today. I mean, they're like any place, right? Like there are social
Right.
issues,
Yeah.
complicated, but it's peaceful, and it's from what everybody tells me, Vienna's lovely, and it's very different. It's very, very different. So we're talking about a different period in history and the way that Austria has evolved since 1955, since like the formal end of World War II. It's just incredibly different and incredibly peaceful. Europe is a very different place than it was even a generation ago. And so all of that is just to say that my grandfather never went back. He didn't want to. The place that he grew up in, it was destroyed after World War II. But now that place has evolved again, and I think, it's a very different place than it was, even 50 years ago.
Mhm. And besides the art culture, what are some of the thriving industries that are taking place right now in Austria as we speak?
Well, they have a lot of tourism. They just had the 60th anniversary of the Sound of Music, which took place in Austria. So they're very, there are some celebrations about that out in Salzburg. They invest a lot in culture. They invest a lot in the arts. There's also a lot of companies that you wouldn't think are Austrian, but they are. So Red Bull, for example, Red Bull's an Austrian company,
Oh,
and
nice. Okay, I think I'm
yeah,
ready to have
so
one
lots
in
of
honor of you
energy.
guys. It's got
Yeah,
wings. Fly to Austria.
yeah, exactly. So, there are all these like things that are they're interesting, right? You're like, huh, like I never thought of that before. So they're definitely focused on the past, but the businesses and the companies and all of that, they're very vibrant. There's a lot of hiking, there's a lot of agriculture still, there's winemaking, there's all the, all this like, nice things that really are about keeping traditions and having this quality of life, but also giving them a modern twist. And so that's pretty cool.
It certainly does as well too. And some most talented from Austria at the time start coming to U.S. And there's a chapter in there where your grandfather were in a museum where Louis that was it Louis was it XIV? I'm trying to think. My numbers here was it 13th, 14th, or something like that. A cabinet's on display, and they thought, yeah, kick. They go, no, I made that cabinet.
Yeah, I'm glad you like that story. So he was a cabinet maker. That's what he was trained to do. He went to trade school, and at the time when he was in school in the 1920s, that was a really good craft that Austria was very famous for. And when he moved to the US, he worked in furniture design and manufacturing, and he, ran some factories for a while, and he was really in that space, but he could also still do that like really old school like craft stuff. And people would ask for replicas, and he would always kind of put his little seal inside, like so that he knew that it was something that he made. And then he randomly like saw one of those in a museum, and he was like, "Wait, what? Like I made that thing? That's crazy."
Oh my gosh. And something that's really discovered as well too, and more to discover with author Anne Hand of Austria Again, Reclaiming a Lost Legacy. We'll get that 1 minute. You listen to the Mike Wagner Show at the MikeWagnerShow.com, powered by SoundCloud Studios, brought to you by official sponsor of the Mike Wagner Show, international warring author Mia Mostly Missing. That's We Thomas by Serena Wagner, based on the life of David Queen, theories, quiz of pains, and King David Psalms, Amazon.com, keyword Sweet Thomas Serena Wagner. We'll be back with the amazing author Anne Hand of Austrian Again, Reclaiming a Lost Legacy after this time. Rebecca, author and hand of Austrian Again, Reclaiming a Lost Legacy here on the Mike Wagner Show. And you've done some time with research and everything. You also spent time between Massachusetts and Mexico City, and you've done a lot of work with global education, development, everything else, blending research, and more as well. You're making a great impact at.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. We all do our best, right? We try to put in our grain of sand and we hope that what we do, matters in the world. I really do believe that. So I just feel really lucky to have been able to, worked on these really interesting projects and got to travel for work. And with all this, with the book now, I think, having done the kind of work that I've done, it gave me a very different perspective on, what I was doing with the family research, why I was doing it. It helped me understand, how I fit into the world in a different way. And I'm happy with that, and I'm happy with the book. And I hope that people read it, right? I hope that people like it. I hope people are able to think about their own, stories and their family past and think about, what happened, right? Like, how did people get here? Why did they come? What was it like then? What was it like to adapt? And a lot of people don't tell those stories, and it's just so important that, we understand what our grandparents and our great grandparents went through so that, it gives us, I think, a lot more strength and a much firmer grounding in who we are and what our values are and what we care about.
And something amazing as well too. And there's some more gaps that had to be filled, maybe just a few more gaps. You want to talk about that still need to be filled in this whole venture.
So one of the things that as I was doing the research, they're both of my great grandparents had these huge extended families that just, disappeared basically after 1939. And you can just assume the worst because that's honestly like that's probably what happened. But nobody talked about it. Nobody told those stories. Nobody said, hey, there were these cousins or hey, there were these, aunts and uncles and nobody, it was just kind of gone. And so I was able to fill some of those gaps. I was able to find, some of the cousins. I was able to do that research and see what I could find before the whole felt, too big and too dark. And I'm glad that I was able to do that. And I was glad that I was able to at least, understand that, the immensity basically of what happened and the fact that, my family was really lucky, like my immediate family, to be able to leave when they did. They were so fortunate. And I think that they recognized that and they realized that. And maybe that's why they didn't want to talk about it because they didn't consider themselves victims, right? In the same way that all these other people that they loved and cared about were. But they, just understanding the scope and the immensity of what happened to regular people during that period is so important. Like my family was super regular. My great grandmother ran a tavern, right? Like in this working class neighborhood where
Mm-hmm.
they had lived for 30 years. And, they were just regular people. And you don't read about regular people very much. You don't read about what happened to regular people. And so to me, it was just so important, to tell this story, give it a little bit more light. Like we all deserve to be reflected in art and literature. We all deserve to feel like we can see ourselves in different things. And I had never seen myself before in what I'd read about, this time period, what I'd read about Vienna. And I never saw stories that I recognized. So, sort of put it out there and let it live in the world and then just let people do what they're going to do with it. I mean, that's a cool thing to do. So I hope people like it. I hope people appreciate it.
And I'm sure people do as well too. Now, right at this moment, do you feel Viennese or do you feel American? I'm going to throw
I
that out
don't
there
know.
just for fun.
I feel American. It's not. There are things, right? There's some food, there's, desserts and there's music and all that. But no, I mean, I think for so many of us, like I grew up here. I grew up in the US. I feel American. My parents were both born here, and there's just kind of the way that there are definitely things about the way we do things that are very, very different than the way that they do things. And so much of it is about like personality and opportunity and just, trying to do things and seeing where it goes. And but for me personally, I mean, I feel right now today, yeah, I feel very American and I'm very proud to be American.
And certainly as well too. And what else you want readers to get from the book?
I want them to know that it's really easy to do this kind of research. I want them to know that they can find out more information of and really do their own research about their own families and where people came from and what they did and and knowing we all have different family dynamics, right? Like knowing the way that our families like communicate or say things or don't say things or whatever, what those patterns are like. I think that you when you know that and you kind of see more about the historical piece of it, you can, fill in those gaps in your mind and you can understand a lot better, like what they must have been thinking or what they must have been feeling or how they made the decisions that they made to do something and not something else or go somewhere and not somewhere else. And in our day and age where we know like what happened, because fast forward and here we are and these are our lives today, but nobody knows that. Nobody knows what things are going to be like, 3 generations later. And it's just, I think it's so important to reconnect with, what our ancestors went through. And we can do that today. Anybody can do that today. And I didn't realize that. So I think it's so important for everybody to realize, like, you can do this. You can take the story. You can make the story your own. And I hope that people do that.
And certainly as well too, you're doing a great job at it. And where can people find the book and what's your website?
Yeah, so it's on Amazon and Bookshop and Barnes and Noble on those websites. Just type in Amazon or Austrian Again, not Amazon again, Austrian Again, and it'll pop up. And then you can follow me on Twitter X, and I'm on LinkedIn, and I'm on Facebook. So you can find me there. I think I'm also pretty easy to find on all of those. Just Anne Hand. I just use my name for everything. And yeah, I've got some events coming up. A lot of them are going to be both live and online. So if you're curious about more, get the book. If you want to chat, reach out. And I'm just so happy to, open the door and see who walks through.
We'll certainly do that as well. You're the amazing multi-talent Anne Hand of Austrian Again, Reclaim a Lost Legacy here on the Mike Wagner Show. And just a few more things. What else can we expect you to wrap up 2025 and go into 2026 and beyond?
So right now I'm just doing this. The book's out there, but you gotta like get it to walk. You gotta let it run. You gotta do all that. So, I'm just gonna be here and having these conversations and engaging about the book. Next year we've got some exciting stuff. I think we're gonna have some stuff in New York for the book. We're gonna have some stuff in Vienna. So I will be going back, like for at least for a few weeks to promote the book and kind of see where it goes. And then after that, we'll see. 6 months ago, if you'd said that like we'd be talking right now, I'd be like, yeah, sure. I have like podcasts. I was like, what? So you know, you never know, right? Where things are going to go and who you're going to chat with and where things are going to lead. And I'm just, open to wherever the road takes me. So, and that's an exciting thing.
And certainly as well, too, if you have your next book, make sure you talk about it from Vienna. And also don't forget to serve some delicious food, everything like that. And
Absolutely.
who you consider biggest influence in your career?
My grandfather, who, I start the book writing about my grandfather. He just showed me that you can go as far as your imagination takes you, and you can try new things, and they don't always have to work. And that's okay. Like he had professional successes, but he also had professional setbacks.
Mm,
And this kind of resilience, right, that came from, who he was when he immigrated and reestablishing himself in New York, and then, serving in World War II. He was stationed in Wisconsin, actually.
nice.
So and then, after the war, really having these big dreams and big ambitions. But you got to try, right? You got to put one foot in front of the other and you just got to see what happens and you have to enjoy the ride, no matter where it takes you. So I think my grandfather taught me that. And I hope he'd be proud of the book.
Especially with his Louis the 14th cabinet as well, too. He'd be proud of it as well. So
Exactly.
there you go. And what's the best advice you can give to anybody at this point?
Oh gosh, that's a good question. Nobody's asked me that question before. I think just try. Just try, put it out there, put yourself out there. Don't doubt. I think that we doubt ourselves. We ask ourselves a little too many questions. Maybe we think it has to be perfect. But nothing's perfect in this world, and you just got to do the best you can do. Be the best version of yourself, and put in the effort. Try and work hard, and the rest will take care of itself.
You got that right, and that's the best advice out there. Here's the amazing multi-talented author Anne Hand of Austrian Again, Reclaim a Lost Legacy in a Mike Wagner Show. And a very big thank you for your time. You've been absolutely fantastic. Learned a lot. Looking forward to soon. Keep us up to date. Keep in touch. Laugh at you back. What's your website? How do people contact you? Where can people purchase or check out your book?
So people can check out the book on Amazon, on bookshop.org, and on Barnes and Noble. Just type in Austrian Again, it'll pop up. You can order it there. It'll get to your house in a couple days. If you don't have a Kindle, if it's the Kindle, it'll be right away. So that's exciting. And then I'm on Twitter, X, and Facebook, and LinkedIn, and you can look for me there. And I'm so happy to connect with people who are interested in Austrian Again. And I hope you like the book.
We certainly will check that out. Once again, Anna, very big thank you for your time. You've been absolutely amazing. Looking forward to having soon. Keep us up to date. Keep in touch. Live have you back. We wish all the best. And Anne, you definitely have a great future ahead.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks to everybody listening and just have an awesome time, awesome day wherever you are.